40 years. I made this back in, where are we, 1981, when I was a second year apprentice cook, and I wanted a really hot toolbox. I've just pulled it out to find a knife that I haven't used for a while. So let's have a look and see what's inside. Dust it off a bit. As you can see, it's been sitting for a while. These aren't all the tools I've had, but they're sort of what's left. This is a Thai pattern chopper, based very similar to Chinese choppers, but it has what you could say are classic Thai proportions and design elements, like this sweeping up here. I like carbon steel knives. When I started cooking, carbon steel knives were on the way out, and chrome vanadium steel stainless knives were very much the thing. Carbon steel just gets sharper. I don't care what people say. After 40 years, I reckon carbon steel knocks stainless steel, but stainless steel is better as a general purpose knife, because you don't have to be as careful with the types of food you're cutting or cleaning it and all that sort of stuff. Give it a quick rinse underwater, it's clean. These carbon steel will stain and rust and stuff, and you have to sharpen them more frequently. This is a very good chopper. Cleaver, an Italian one. It's had very little use. I've had 2 bulls, and what do you say about a cleaver? It cleaves. I went through a stage of knife making. I thought, oh, I'd like to try making knives. So I made some pretty odd ones. This was one fairly odd one, and it's pretty crap. But it does get sharp. I have no idea what you use it for. It's a bit like an Inuit flaying knife, but with an offset handle. So it's really pretty useless for anything. This was patterned on on cheese knives of the late 80s, early 90s. Has a single bevel, which does makes it cut much more easily, especially things like cheese. And single bevel knives really are much more accurate than a double bevel knife. Single bevel being a Japanese idea. So you have knives which are left and right-handed. This will be a right-handed knife because the bevel is on the right-hand side. The bevel, it cuts very flat like that, and you're able to control the depth of cut by how you approach how the bevel is approaching the food, and in exactly the same way as a chisel approaches wood. As you can see, the staining there is what you don't get on stainless steel. Just a couple of little paring knives. You may have seen these. If you've been to Thailand, you will have seen these. These are for fruit and vegetable carving. They're a variation on the Mars knife. This is a knife for turning vegetables. For doing turned potatoes, you do this. You hold the potato like that, and you take the knife in your hand, thumb on the bottom, and you turn it like that, and you cut 7 sides. These are really good for getting if you're making, say, a chrysanthemum or a dahlia or something like that out of watermelon or turnip or radishes, daikon. These are great for getting into cut to undercut the petals. They're a marvellous knife. They're a prick of a knife, really. They're very difficult to use. Women tend to be very, very good with these, much more adroit than men. It's a little old boner, straight boner. This is an upswept boning knife. It goes up like that. Straight boners are very good for large things. If you have to bone take a sirloin off the bone, you can get the knife in and you can do this. And the knife, the point of the knife is you know exactly where it is in relation to the bone. You're doing this all the time, coming down and around. These are good for smaller things. They're good for chooks, bits of lamb. I just like this because it looks wicked, and it actually fits beautifully in my hand. Cook's knife, of course. This is a Geisser. It's a German brand, I think, or Swiss, I don't know. It does a good job. Good knife. It's a bit big for the home cooking that I do these days. But in a professional kitchen, you use one of these all the time because they have just the right amount of weight for wrecking your way through things. This is an onion head slicer used for cutting large pieces of meat. For if you're cutting a top side or rump or whatever, or cutting steaks off a sirloin, you get a nice. They just work really well. Good knives. Just a ham slicer. Same brand, I think, as this. This is the blades. They were made in Queensland, and this is I forget what wood it is. It's Queensland timber, though. It's very hard, very dense timber, and as you can see, very thin, or not whippy, but flexible knife. So you can work your way around the knuckle, say. Your average utility knife, just a utility knife, and a steel. I bought this when I was 17, about 3 or 4 years before I became a cook, when I first moved out of home. So I've had this for at least 45 years, and as you can see, it's worn a bit around the top there, but it's beautiful. Again, it's one of those tools that just fits really nicely in my hand. And here's a point of interest for you. If you're using a steel, there are different ways of using a steel. Some people like to go that way because the knife is, the blade is, the direction of the blade is away from your hand. Others like to do this. I don't like it because it's not flash. I like to do it like this. There is one problem, that the main thing if you're holding it like this and doing this way is you slice your thumb. So put your thumb on top like that, and what you're doing is taking your knife round like that at an angle, and then back the other way, and at an angle again. I'm accentuating the angles so that you can see them. So you wipe the knife down like that, and it's all in the wrist action. It's like that. It's not like this with your elbow flopping around like a prick in a shirt sleeve. These are little tiny ball cutters. That's a pea cutter. Use that for doing, so something like consomme consomme Saint-Germain, I think it is. And oval ball cutter. I don't know where the other ball cutter's gone. My very nice, very expensive Trident Zester. This is a little little tiny upswept boner that I made just for boning out things like quail. If you want to make a quail galantine, this is the tool. It lets you get in enough rounding on the handle so that you can roll it nicely, and you can get your thumb on the back of the blade if you have to. It offers very good control. The underside. A few bits and pieces in here. These are column cutters, and column cutters are usually were used for cutting shaped columns of bread, which you would then fry and use as a stand for, well, not for a shutter bring on, because that'd be a sockle, but if you were making centerpieces and you wanted to stand something up high, you'd cut your bread with those, and then you'd deep fry it so it gets some rigidity, and you'd use those to stand things up. Foundation pieces, I guess you'd call them. A couple of piping nozzles on there. Oh, this one, this nozzle, you have a look through, has little holes in the bottom. This is one for making nestle rod pudding, which is a chestnut puree, sweetened and flavoured with kirsch and mixed with cream, and it's one of those nice things to have in a cold country where you don't actually have much in the way of pleasant fresh fruit or whatever during the winter. So this would go into a piping bag, you'd fill your bag with the nestle rod mix and go with it, and it'd squirt out little worms of chestnut puree. Everyone needs a mascot. Here's my little Smurf chef. What else have we got there? Freezer clip. A pair of scissors. Everyone's seen these. These are just chicken shears, poultry shears. Don't use them very often. You don't really need them. I bought them, I don't know why. This is called a tunnel boning knife. And the tunnel boning knife, as you can see, has a curve, and it's sharp not on the sides but at the end. And the idea of this is when you have a joint of meat like a ham or say a leg of lamb, and you want to bone it out without cutting into the meat and then working around the bone. So you have this knife, and it goes up the bone like that, and you work it around, and it separates the meat from the bone. They're very expensive, and I think I've used this about twice. This is an F-Dick. I don't know that F-Dick exists anymore. Everybody went to trade school and they'd say, oh, I've got my 10-inch dick, I've got my 8-inch dick, and I'd say, oh, I've got my fucking 8-inch, my tunnel boning dick. So there you go. That's another little utility knife I made. Not terribly good, but you know, they work all right. This is an old saw blade. It's a bit blunt at the moment. Hasn't been, you can tell by the verdigris, it hasn't been used for an awful long time. Now, just a sec while I adjust the camera. This is a set of larding needles and trussing needles. My cooking stuff goes back to predominantly 19th and early mid-20th century style of cooking, very much French inspired cooking. These are larding needles. Larding, and these ones are trussing needles. So with these, it's just sewing stuff. So whack your yarn through there, and you use that for going through a bit of flap or whatever. If you're making vitello tonnato or something, you'd truss the veal up using one of these. These are larding needles, and larding needles are used for inserting fat into what would otherwise be dry meat. Sometimes they're used for a decorative pattern as well. If you're doing smorgasbord work, you might do an eye fillet and you'd lard it and you'd make a star pattern, or you'd make a circular pattern in the centre with squares of pork fat, and then you'd slice it and you'd have a circular pattern of pork fat through it, a bit like salami but not as random. These are used, and I'm using a piece of old t-shirt to show you how these work. These, you get a piece of pork back fat, which is fat from the back, and there are two layers of fat. One is hard, and the other one is a bit softer, and you want the hard stuff. It's reasonably strong. So what you do is you get your piece of fat and you put it through here. Oh, go in there. And then you pull it back. No. Geez, it worked fine when I tested to see if it would work all right. So you'd pull that in like that. So you'd use these tines to hold the fat, and then you get maybe a turkey breast, and you slide that through, and you'd pull it through, and of course the fat would stay in the meat. Trim there, and that increases the fat content of the meat, which makes it more succulent. This is another style, and this is one I had far more success with. I thought these were an absolute fucking pain in the ass. I used to lard a lot of quail breasts, or whole quails, and this one was perfect for it. And this one, as you can see, it has serrated teeth there, and it has a tooth there, and you put your piece of fat on there, and you close that down like that, and the piece of the teeth would all hold it as you poked it through. And you pull it through, you open it up, take it off, snip, and then you get nice succulent quail breasts, especially if you barred them with bacon as well. You wrap the quail in bacon, or bacon fat, or cassaflake fat, even thin slices of pork back fat, to increase it so that the meat's not as dry. And then next, this is a Mars knife, M-A apostrophe S or something. Just a little cheapie. They're used for doing turned vegetables, and we turn vegetables like this. We go. Yep, geez, it's been a while since I've done this. You're supposed to get 7 even facets, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've failed. I used to teach this shit. The mandolin, fantastic tool. It will cut pom mignonette, or mignonette, not necessarily poms, could be carrots or whatever. It'll cut julienne. It will cut straight slices, so of varying thickness. So if you want to do, say, pomzana, where you stack everything and cook it with cream and stuff, you do it like that. If you want to do chips, pom Saratoga, like that, you can adjust the rear end so that you have waffle cuts or crinkle cut, and I'll show you how these work. So we'll start off with julienne. Now julienne is 2mm by 2mm by 6mm, but we're not going to get 6. Well, we might get 6mm out of that. So we just do that, and we get 2mm square. Lovely. Very good for making, well, actually what you use for making Pompeille. That's just P-A-I-L-L-E, Pompeille. One of the potato chip companies sells them as friendships. I turn it round the other way, and we'll go for Pom's mignonette. And there we go. Dry them off, maybe dust them with a bit of potato flour, whack them in the deep fryer. Beautiful. And then we'll go and do some straight cut. So adjust the blade back up, drop that down into neutral, first gear, second gear, neutral, and we'll finish this one off. Nice even pieces. And again, dry them off, whack them in the deep fryer. You've got potato crisps or chips, whichever, depending on which country you live in. Now the other one, and this is one I used to like a lot, there was a nice tacky thing back years ago, bird's nests. You just make a basket, a deep fried basket out of potato, and you serve bits of fish and prawns and bits of seafood that didn't quite make it in that, and call it a fisherman's basket. Now this one we go, I'm not going to peel it, and we get waffle cut potatoes or wafer, crinkle cut potatoes. Again, you fry them, dusting of salt. If you're in Australia, you go to KFC, they'll dust it with chicken salt. Well, I believe anyway, I haven't bought anything from KFC for about 40 bloody years. Now the other nice little trick with this, if we set it a little finer, oh, wrong one. Again, I haven't done this for years. We get very pretty, lacy gaufrette potatoes, and these, if you're being a smart ass, if you're being cheap and you're making the seafood basket, you do it with these, which is a wire basket, shaped a bit like a bloody Easter egg mould really, and just layer those inside, deep fry it. The starch would help them stick together. If you're doing it with these, you can charge an extra couple of bucks because they're so much sexier. So you do it with these because you can charge more for it. And that concludes the lesson, dear folks.